Hey, Tim, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm not getting any sound from the council chamber.
The mic is on now. You should hear it.
There we go. Now we've got you.
Thank you. And then, do you have the follow cam on? Okay. We'll get there in just a second. So here, hold on one sec, Tim. Okay, and then the password is that PubWorks 441, capital P, capital W. Wait, hold on one second. Yeah. It's not .com. It's not .com over here? No. It's the password you wrote, pubworks.com. It's just PubWorks 441. Okay. So that's the password. Okay. You're set. Okay. You're set. Okay. That's funny. So you all are a little bit younger than the last crowd, and you picked up on it pretty quick. So everybody skipped this screen that I'm showing now when you first logged in, and you can see that your username and password were already typed in. I just want to go over your PubWorks username and password are your first name, period, last name, and then your password is your first name, period, last name. Now, we just set it up so that you don't have to do 2 usernames and passwords. We're trying to make it easy for you, or easier. As of right now, I think that you're not going to have like computers, like you'll log in as yourself in the cloud and then you'll log work. But everybody's at this screen from what I understand. Is that right? You're here? Okay. So this is the right click and this is left click. You want to click this to select things. Okay. Perfect. So yeah, so it was Tim. Okay. So have you guys been told anything about PubWorks? Okay, so what PubWorks is it's an asset management job costing software. Well, what does that mean? It's a combination of mobile timesheet and an inventory of everything in your system. So all the equipment and all the roads and all the water valves, everything is in PubWorks. That's what the asset management side of it is. And the job costing is, well, how much does it cost to take care of it? And we use this simple model of a person doing a task at a location to figure out what you're doing. So you're all here at City Hall. We're doing this task called training. And because we know how much time we've spent here, we know the cost of that. Now, it's not all as easy as that, because you may be snow plowing and it's nice to have a snow plow so you can add equipment. And if you're pothole patching, it's good to have cold mix or hot mix to patch the pothole. So you can add materials and equipment to any activity. But really, it's all based on this simple concept that we call a daily activity. Now, the PubWorks program runs on the menus on the top of the program, and most of the menus that we're going to talk about today, or the menu items, are in the PubWorks data menu. And then we're going to get into service requests towards the end. But if I click on daily activity, this is what a daily activity is in PubWorks. So if you all click on PubWorks data and daily activities, it's going to open. Now it's a log, so you are all probably looking at the same record that I am, which is daily activity 1. And what it is it's just a log sheet. So imagine opening up a book or a log, and you're on page 1. So if you wanted to add to it, we've got an add button in the top center of the program, and that's where we could add a new activity. If we wanted to just go to the next activity, like activity 2, I can click the next button, and it goes to activity 2, and if I click it again, it goes to activity 3. If I want to go back to the first record, I can click first, and the last record, I can click last. Now, these menu bars at the top of the form are the same for almost all of our screens. So if you've used a computer in the last 25 years, it should be pretty intuitive to use PubWorks. And if it doesn't seem intuitive, just let me know and we can talk to you about what we can do to make that better. Now, the menu items here at the top are grouped. So there's reports here on the left, there's some navigation buttons, and then there's add, save, cancel, delete, and locate. An add would be adding a new record, save would be saving the record that you are currently using. Cancel is maybe you've made a mistake and you don't know what to do and you just want an undo button. And then there's delete and locate. Now we don't touch the delete button as much anymore because when you delete something, it goes away forever. Instead, oftentimes we'll use an inactive button, but if you've messed up one of the records you're working on, you can click delete. Sort would allow you to sort so that when you're clicking one of the next, previous, or last buttons, what is the next record that you're going to? Is it going by the activity number? Is it going by the date? So that's where you can set that information. Now, edit is an important button. So if I'm looking here at record number 8 and I wanted to edit it, that's where I can click edit, and then the form becomes active and I can change it. And then we have this thing called the filter, and if I click on it, it opens up this thing called the activity filter, which allows you to see all the records in your system and then filter out to see the things that are only important to you. I don't think I've had a ringtone on my phone in 10 years. It's like tell me a boomer without telling me you're a boomer. If your phone has a ringtone. It's not that derogatory, but I changed my dad's to my voice, being like, "Hey, Dad, you've got a call. Hey, Dad, pick up your phone. Hey, Dad, change your phone." Oh, that's good. That's good. And I like how you guys are laughing. You know, the training is meant to be interactive, and it's not for me to just sit here and talk at you. It's to explain concepts, make sure you understand it. Here, if I've gone too fast or too slow, you know, your feedback, go over any questions you have, and then go to the next item. So it might seem weird that we're going over these navigation buttons, but have you ever seen More or Map as a button? Maybe you've seen Map in Google Maps, but if you click on the More button, this is where you would log or this is where you would add an attachment. And there's just a small problem there. I'll make note of that and change it in a sec. Now, the yeah. Thanks.
Push that button there.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you. I feel like they even brought a Mint here. It's better than the hotel. Try to fly with this. That would be great. Here, I have to take a sip before I can set it down. It's so full. So this attached documents allows you to fill in a line here so that either a PDF or a JPEG or another document could be stored with this. Now, for a daily activity, it might not make sense, but if it's an equipment record, maybe you want to put in the vehicle registration. If it's an employee record, maybe you want to put a picture of the employee. By just simply clicking Add Document, you can add a document to any record in PubWorks. Now, I spent like 10 minutes explaining what binoculars were to somebody recently. So I don't just make fun of boomers. The millennials are like, you squint every once in a while. If you ever need to look for anything in PubWorks, that locate button is your friend. Now, I start out showing this screen in the trainings because this is what we're building to. There's an employee, there's a location, and there's a task, just like the list off to my right. And for every one of those items, you'll notice that when I click Add, there's a drop list. So you pick from this list to fill out the form. So you can pick from the list. Or you can start typing. And as you type, PubWorks will automatically search for an existing record. Now, if there's not a record in the system, then you can't add it. And that way that there's no junk in and no junk out of PubWorks. Occasionally, you're going to run into something where you go to log work, and there isn't something there. So maybe the road doesn't exist. Maybe the piece of equipment you're using is new, or maybe it's a new employee. So you can add records at any time really easily by going back to this PubWorks data menu and selecting the list off to the left. So if you wanted to add a piece of equipment, you could go to the equipment list and then go to Add Equipment and then click the Add button, or All Equipment and then click the Add button. So let me do that again just a little slower. You can go to any item that's on the daily activity form in this PubWorks data and then add another record. Now the first group didn't have the benefit of existing records, so we spent a lot of time just talking about these records or these menu items first. But let me go into this. PubWorks is meant to be simple and easy to use. And for the worker just logging their work, it's a mobile timesheet. They go into PubWorks data and they just click daily activities and they log their work all day. But for an administrator or for somebody who's working on equipment or vehicles, they may be in the fleet maintenance section and log all their work in fleet maintenance. If somebody is in the office and they just get calls all day about potholes or dead deer or ice issues on the road, they may just be in the service request menu. So everybody kind of has their own little niche in PubWorks, but it all works together. So just like I talked about earlier, the asset management job costing core is the list of all of your assets in PubWorks, and that it's all managed here in PubWorks data. So we're going to come back to this daily activities form, but I'm going to break this down and show you, well, what do each of these records look like in PubWorks in order to have that list there. And occasionally, if you try to close a screen in PubWorks, it does have a little warning symbol here, but that's trying to tell you something. It's not just an error. So it says you must enter regular or overtime hours of an employee. Well, I had clicked add, and it thinks that I'm trying to add an employee record. So let me click cancel, and then it'll let me close. It should be right next to delete in the top of the form. It's okay. Here. So you can click OK here, and then cancel. So if you noticed when I first logged in, I have a lot of PubWorks in my cloud. So I'm going to bring up the demo data and show you the employee menu item first. As of right now, it's turned off on your users, but I want to show you that under PubWorks data, under the covers, there is an employee record for each one of you. And as we talked about, is it Brad? Yeah, we have two of your records in there right now, and we're going to take one of them out because you're in the fire department and here. But the employee number should match what's in BSNA as of right now. And then there's the username and password. And then what was said earlier is the address and personal information for you isn't stored in PubWorks. It's just in BSNA, so that your privacy is kept. We don't store things like social security numbers in PubWorks anyways. We discourage it, so know that that is there.
Driver's license off and your address. Anything that's personally identifiable is not in the PubWorks system, only in the BSNA software where your payroll comes from right after that. So we're not going to try to manage your personally identifiable information to location. This is simply to track who is working on something and what your pay rate is, so it has the cost to do it.
And you say that, and I just want to clarify. So there's a base rate and a regular rate and an overtime rate in PubWorks. And oftentimes the base rate is what somebody would see on their paycheck, where the regular rate would be the loaded rate. So the Social Security or the benefits, health insurance, that type of thing. And then the overtime rate is usually 1.5 times the regular rate. But you can set it up how you want. So being union, it might just be based off of a title and everybody with the same title has it, or it might be individual. I'm not fully privileged to that, but that's none of my business. I'm here to tell you the other things at PubWorks. There is a rate where you can do an overhead rate and a FEMA rate. So if you need to have 3 other rates, we make it available to you. And then we have a whole section if you need to keep track of dates, not just birth, date, and last evaluation and hire date, but you can change these to track when certifications expire or key dates of employment. As I talked about earlier, the menu option for all of our screens is essentially the same. Reports is always on the left, then you'll have 4 navigation buttons, and then add, save, cancel, delete, locate more, and then maybe a map. And if there's something to see under the more button or some of these tabs, you'll notice that you'll see an asterisk. So there's an asterisk next to activity log here and one next to more. So if I click on Mike Hardy's record, I can see there are a couple of forms that are attached. And viewing an attached document in PubWorks is easy. You should be able to click on the more button, click on the row, the thing that you want to see, and then click display document, and it should appear. So just moving back to your PubWorks, that covers employee records. We also have a menu item for equipment. And notice that when I clicked on the menu item for equipment, there are a whole bunch of equipment types listed here, and that comes from what's stored under equipment type here for each piece of equipment. And we can subcategorize that out. So if you only want to look at fire engines, I can click here. It opens the equipment screen, but it will only show you 3 records. Now, we color code things in the United States. All school buses are yellow, all fire trucks are normally red, right? Well, in PubWorks, all the important things are in yellow, and all the optional things are in white. So you can see that the cost per hour and the code and the name of equipment are required. So when I checked into the hotel, they did the same thing last night. They only highlighted the important parts of the form, and they gave it to me to initial and sign. We do the same thing in PubWorks, so there's a code and a name. Now, I used to work on a green screen too. I think, Derek, you said that? You used to work on a green screen? Well, I would get lost. Like, I'd work at a bank, somebody would call, I'd talk for 10 minutes, I'd come back, I couldn't remember where I was. When PubWorks, that happens all the time too. And you'll notice that when we move the cursor, you'll see that there's an orange tracer. And it's ironic that I'm holding a bullet, but we based that off of like the orange tracer in the military. Every 5th bullet has an orange tracer, so you can see where you're shooting. We try to make it in most of the screens, wherever your cursor is an orange. What?
I'm the military guy in the organization. I just maybe to talk about tracer routes.
No. Okay. Now, one of the things I skipped over for the employee record, but there's a record active checkbox for everything in PubWorks too. So if I were to work for a couple of years and then go away, you wouldn't just delete my record, because then it pokes a hole in the database. So if you go to run a report and it says, well, who was the guy who patched that pothole 3 years ago? You don't want it to say empty or error. So instead you make the employee inactive. They don't show up on your current drop list, but then it archives all of their records.
There's information to fill in right here, like that say we know about this fire engine. We could go in and fill this in and save this right now.
Yeah, at any time. And it's optional. And one of the things that we talked about in the earlier meeting is this might seem overwhelming, like, oh God, there's all this stuff I have to fill out. Well, no, it's like, if you know it, then you can fill it out. If you don't know it, then it's not gonna run your day. But if you have some time and you're working on a vehicle, you can fill it out, and then when you're on the next vehicle, fill it out.
When you close on this, they'll just throw a save thing kind of.
Yeah, so if I what is this vehicle?
That's the blade of the truck.
Okay, do you know the make of it? Okay. And as I started typing, that save button became active. And this is getting a little bit into the nuts and bolts of it, but if I go click next, so it saved that track list, I could have clicked save and next, PubWorks for the first time, or like, you know, the first couple months. Instead, they'll start typing here and they're like, oh yeah, track list. You're like, oh no, what have I done? That's why we have
Earlier on, you also talked about where you
yeah. So you can put the fuel number here in the external code, and then we can also put a FEMA code here. No, you have the fleet maintenance module turned on, so that adds some secondary odometer. That's pretty cool. Cars have it. We also have specs where you can have what fuel goes into the vehicle, what does it run on, and then as we get into some more things, we'll talk about preventative maintenance items, and you can set those for the vehicle. So what does it need to use more specs to? So you can add quite a bit. But do you need to know all this stuff if you're logging a daily activity? No, you just need to know the code or the name of the vehicle. And we name all of the codes and names in PubWorks different. And this might sound bad, Brad, but see, both of you just looked at me. You don't know which one I'm talking about, so I have to say like BW or BD. Same thing with PubWorks. We have to name, like we literally have tens of thousands of GIS records, and each one of them had to be unique before we could bring it into PubWorks. Because it's easy when you see it on a map, right? It's this point over here as opposed to this point over there, but we actually need to have a unique name, and we have that built in. Of the vehicle show up in this spot here. And then if you get fancy, you can put primary in the name of the picture, and it will show up there, as opposed to if you took like a side picture and a profile and the back. Again, we try to stay away from the delete button. If you've added any records to this vehicle, so if you've ever done any work to it, if you've ever had a service request, if you've ever had any odometer readings, it won't let you delete. But as of right now, we're kind of in that middle period where we've done the data conversion, but we don't have records, you know, activity records set for any of your vehicles, so you can delete things. I would just say stay away from that button. We once told somebody in a training like a year ago, we're like, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, take it. You know, you're not gonna break anything. And the girl hit delete like over 600 times over lunch, and she like, she crushed the database. We're like, we weren't challenging you. So yeah, just stay away from that button. If you do see any records or duplicates today, the morning session was pretty good. John and Marcus were like, hey, we both have duplicate records, and you're gonna probably have a duplicate record for Brad too. Then that's how we know about that. Let me know. And the data conversion sometimes is like putting a square peg into a round hole. Most of the things transfer, but not everything. So if you see anything that doesn't make sense, please let me know. Okay.
They're only one record at a time.
Got it. But at any given day, could they log on one or the other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so like right now, if we had a fire, Brad's on duty, so he's not gonna probably leave, but if they need to, if he jump into the fire truck and respond to that fire, you know, he can turn off his DPW hat, put on his fire hat, and
Okay, and what we might end up doing is going into those employee records and then just changing the last name so that it has fire at the end or DPW at the end. And that way you can, when you go to search from the list, you're not just picking your name from two places. The name would be unique and easier to pick. The employee numbers are different. So John said like he has two employee numbers. It's 1485 and 1486.
That would tie it back to their correct coding from ESNA for their pay rates. So we
Okay.
just have to make sure we know which one is fire, which one is DPW.
Yeah.
Appropriately labeled.
Okay, and we could also put like an F at the end of the fire one, if that makes it easier.
But we do need to resolve that. That's why there's two of each of those guys. Are those really Brenda's the only three, right? Yes.
So going into locations, I said a person doing a task at a location, but there's also a feature too. And feel free to like touch the computers every once in a while. I'm not going to think that you're on Facebook or anything. And then they won't fall asleep and other things won't happen. Tim, did yours fall asleep? Yeah. So, in PubWorks, a location is typically where you go to do work, and then a feature is a thing at that place. So you might go to a street to do sign repair, but you actually work on a specific sign. You might go to a street to do hydrant flushing, but you only work on the hydrant. So we've built in this relationship between locations and features where every one of these ball fields lives at a place. So you can see that this ball field lives at this playground, and the second ball field lives at city playground. So that way we can keep track of them all. Now, most of the locations and features came from your GIS data, and some of it is named logically and some of it is not named logically. And the easiest way to look some stuff up is using the map button, and I want to talk to you about it right now. So right now you're set up so that one of the users at a time can use the map, and when they're done, they need to close out of the program before the next person can use the map. But if I needed to know where this ball field was, an easy way to find that out is to click map, and I'd be able to look it up. But that looks like it came in from.
Those three ball fields are included GIS.
Okay.
If you want to look at anything water maintenance, stuff that's not optical, but you can use GIS.
Okay. Here, I'll use catch basins because I'd be totally lost. Yeah.
When we have the kids coming, are kids gonna have to do all this too?
So we have not established business rules. Okay. We're gonna talk about business rules. And we'll talk about another option here in a second, but no, we don't know. So right now you all fill out a timesheet, and your timesheet gets handed to April, and April's putting all of this data into an Excel spreadsheet. She no longer needs the Excel spreadsheet, she can put it right here. But the question is, will April do it or will you guys do it? Right now, none of you all have a computer, April does, right? So that's a business rule. That's not a system. Right now, you all need to understand what the system is capable of, how it records, and then over time, we have to decide what the business rule is, who does the work and when, how, and to what detail. So there may be some more detail that has to go on your timesheet that doesn't go in there now. But Brad and I and well, the three supervisors that are in here will have to kind of establish those business rules for how we do that. But you're absolutely correct. I don't think any of your summer hours are going to have to touch this. Whether it's somebody from Parks or whether it's April, that's the business rule.
You're just going to have that to get this.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it errors and shuts down the program, that means somebody else has the license as of right now. So somebody might have it. B-Dub might be, you're one person in the map right now. But but it allows you a lot of breadth and depth, and we're going to cover this more later, but it's baked into the program in such a way that the map viewer doesn't really get its own training, but we talk about it. And we'll talk about it with service requests, and we'll talk about it with reporting more as we go along. But it's a pretty amazing feature where you can look up anything in PubWorks, because there's that catch basin I was looking for. So going back to locations, we've got the buildings, the lift stations, the parks, the playgrounds, and then the streets. Now, we've done something a little bit different than we normally do. All of the line assets, the water mains and meters and services and laterals were brought in as their own locations. And sometimes we do that so that, a lateral is connected to a manhole, or it's connected to a main in a way that the relationship is different. Now, as of last night, internally, PubWorks was talking about that, so we may change that, but we just need to know what's important to you and how you log that.
So we got a couple guys who can help answer some of that data, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's times when you might need to go out and figure out where the stops are, north and south of that area, and then be able to determine those two stops so that you know where that is. So you have to know, I need this line shut off, but I need to watch the stops right below that to be able to turn that on. So that's why they need to see the whole line and where those relationships are. And I think that I'm understanding it correctly. We're not a water guy. Pete's my water guy. One of my water guys.
And Pete, we can set it up so you can see everything that's on like Main Street, or we can see that's like everything on your 6 mains if they go through a specific area. There's more than one way to look at it. And have you done a lot of GIS stuff or mapping? Okay. So that might be something that we go over maybe this afternoon or tomorrow in more depth. But essentially, every location record is set up, and we'll see that menu again. The main menu at the top is almost always the same. But the code and the name is set up for the location, and then there are a bunch of attributes. So just like we could do make and model for the vehicle, you can say district and jurisdiction and pavement type for the road. Now we brought in every road by block and by the main road. So you might have one road for Birch Street, and then there might be like 8 sections to it. And we can modify that slightly so that it's a little easier to use, and we'll talk about that more as the training goes on. But like we talked about, the location is where you go to work, and then the thing that you're working on, or one of the sub-locations could be a feature. So I can see a hydrant and a valve that both live on that street. I can also see that there's a service request that's been put in. And I know that there was something to see because there's a little asterisk next to service request. And that's what we did in the first training session. And we're going to just assign everything to Tim Kenny today. So he's got something to do for the rest of the week. How long are you here until the docks are back open? Wow. And then if you logged any work, all of your daily activities for that location would show up here. So you could go and look at a water main and see how many times you worked on it, what you've replaced on it. And then there's a list view of all of the locations. So I clicked here on PubWorks data, and then I clicked on locations, and I selected street. I could have selected all locations, and that'll give you a whole location list. Now, a couple things to notice. When you click on all locations, that's a list of 8,100 records. But when I clicked on just the streets, that's 500. So there's a way to look at just the type of thing that you're looking at. So if you only want to look at water valves, then you can click on that. If you only want to look at parks, and that makes it just a little bit easier to use. Now, one of the things we talked about in more depth in the first session was there are a set of tabs here below the main menu, and the general information tab is the record that you're looking at, and then each one of the subsequent tabs are either the features that live at it, a depreciation schedule, or the work and service requests that were logged. This last menu item is called the List View tab, and it's a list of all of the assets for that menu item. So I'm looking at all of the streets, and so this is a list of all the streets, all 508. Now, if I'm looking at a record here, this is record 24 of 508. That will always be here at the bottom left-hand side. Then this is the code for that location and the name, and then whether or not it's active. And that changes as you select different records. And it stays consistent, so if you're looking at the features, the name and the code of the record are still here at the bottom. Another thing is the code and name is at the top of the screen, so even though you change records, it will say the name and the code.
For my guys that are getting smarter in this room, you're on that feature button. Then select a feature and click map and find it. So if you were looking for that specific valve, you can go over to that map and pull that valve up and see it. Whereas that GIS training you had the other day, it's more about the shape of like a layer. So if you click valves, you bring up all your valves. Whereas in this system, if you're looking for a specific valve, you can dial it down and pick the one valve and it'll highlight that valve for you. So that's one of the differences between GIS and PubWorks. Is you guys are not going out there looking for 50,000, you're looking for one, trying to find it. This will help you dial that one down. If you're looking for a couple, then you might back it up a bit, look for a street worth of valves or a district versus valves. Just kind of help you understand the difference between the GIS training we had and the PubWorks training.
Now the features are, again, things that are at a location. So if you wanted to see a list of all of your hydrants, you could click on that. Here's your list of 492. And you could either click next to the one that you were looking for, or you can click locate and search. So those are binoculars. And if I type in, Maine, it searched and it found Maine because it matches the location code for the hydrants. And anytime you search in PubWorks, it will search actively for each, a match for each one of the columns that are displayed. So there's more than one way to search for things, and it's supposed to be easy to use. So if I typed in hydrant, it would still find all of the records because it matches hydrant. But if you wanted to say Empire Street, I could type in Empire, and I get a list very quick of the things that are on East Empire and West Empire.
Right now, we have one license per map. And so if you're out in the field and Brad pulls it up on his hard tablet, then you couldn't pull it up on a different view. Where you will tell that Brad's open. But if you have like an emergency, somebody's. I don't know if Tim's in the parks. That always makes sense.
Well, yeah, that's a good question, and there's There's kind of a way, and let me show you. If I go here to user powers, I can go here to list view and I can click logged in, and I can see everybody who's logged in to your system. Now that gives you an idea of who might be there, and we'll work on getting some better practices so that when you're done using the map, how to get out so you're not taking care of the license. So you're not like, still using the map, you just casually close the cloud differently, and then you have the license for the whole weekend while you're off work. We'll make sure that you do that. To give the license back, what you need to do is close the whole PubWorks program. So that's what it takes, is closing the whole PubWorks program. And then to log out of the cloud, to double check that, you can click here on the start menu, and then click on your name and click sign out. So those are the two options.
And we're working on, we have those GIS RPP licenses that are ready licenses. And we're gonna work with PubWorks and figure out if that's currently anything else on for us. If I have 3 licenses in town, and all I have to do is do some sort of linkage to PubWorks, make that happen, give us more availability. Those are just things we gotta learn our way through and figure out. And if we have to, we'll figure out how to get another license or whatever. But right now, it's just one of those challenges we have to figure out. Which is why we're discovering it here, right? Who's worried about what? Like, I legitimately right now only have 2 people go to the field. So it's 1 of 2 people that are in the field with it, and then I've only got a handful of people that actually have it on their desktop, and then people work on their desktop. Well, April's probably not gonna be updating apps. I might be looking at something from a perspective that legitimately there's not that many people that you can log in at any time. You know, like we still have these laptops. We got 1 goes back to Derek's shop, 2 go back to Derek's shop, 1 goes to Brad, and then we use the rest of it here in this shop in the city hall. It's not like you're gonna be looking very far. It's probably 1 or 2 people. That list we can get call 2 people. It's gonna take a lot to figure out right now.
And then as we talked about earlier, a person doing a task at a location is an activity, possibly with equipment, and then possibly with materials. So there's a materials list that lives in PubWorks. And the materials list is here under the PubWorks data, and that's everything that you would use out in the field. We keep a matching materials list that we call parts under fleet, and then we differentiate those between stock and non-stock. They really live in the same table, and it's really about whether or not this checkbox is checked for it being a field material or a shop part. But is there a mechanic in the room? Is there? Okay. So Derek, we'll cover parts in greater detail this afternoon. But for now, I'm gonna stop there and say, things that need to show up in that parts list, just get this checkbox. Right now, they're only a handful of materials, but you can see that there's road salt, gas diesel, and then road sand traction. I'm glad that you're adding this as we're going along. It can only sometimes lead you into a pit. Occasionally, I recorded one of these once, and we made service requests. Everyone made their own service requests, and we threw it up on the board, and somebody was a little more sarcastic than needed to be. So just like every other record in PubWorks, there's a code and a name, and then where your cursor is in orange. And then you can make the materials into a subtype so you can keep track of the lists. So that way, your sand and gravel is in one part of the program, and then the material type for cleaning supplies is in another. Your tires and your oil and your lubricants are all in another. So you can really, track that, and then what units you buy it in. Now, you use BS&A for your financial software. Do you put in POs or purchase orders, or see yourself putting in purchase orders into PubWorks?
I don't see
Okay. Okay. We have more than one way of logging work. And like I said at the beginning, we're job costing software. So you could just say that the material costs so much a ton, and then you just use it all the time, and you track the quantity on hand at BS&A. Or you can have the running total here. So you can either click add to inventory every time you buy it, or you can just take it out and job cost it.
I think that some of our materials, especially salt, sand, and gravel, we will track that we added to the inventory and track how much was used and a price per ton, so that if we're tracking, when the guys go out to sand, they know they put 2 scoops, which is some amount of tons into the sander or salter and spread it on the street. So we hope to have that running total. We have to hope to have that be part of our costing. But the actual purchase orders, specifics related to paying invoices, accounts receivable, accounts payable, need to be estimated.
Okay. And
We don't intend to swap those back and forth to share a file or next quarter.
okay, yeah, and it might be just as easy as to say when you buy road sand, the number of units that you bought and the cost. And you can do it by the cost per unit or the total cost. And then you can either calculate the cost of how your job costed out by the average running total, or if you can set it to a price. You can set the shop location of where the material lives, and then you know that you might have 20 tons of sand here and 50 tons out in the yard. For parts, you can keep track of aisle, shelf, and bin. Peoria Park District uses us, and they have like a warehouse that I'm not joking. When I walked through it, it felt like I was in Indiana Jones, where they put the Ark. And they have every aisle, shelf, and bin, and thousands of parts. You can say where you get the material from, and you can choose a primary vendor and a secondary vendor, and that just helps filling it out. Filling out when you buy to add to inventory, whether or not you're going to use this primary or secondary vendor. Kind of. We have the ability to do a reorder quantity. So if we say we want to have at least 100 on hand, or we buy 100 and then we want at least 10,000 on hand, when you change these numbers, you can see that turned red, and that's to give you an idea that that's below your minimum thresholds. And while there isn't a clock, we do have these inventory reports. And the inventory report does have a reorder report. And so that will tell you what needs to be reordered.
So today I just got an email telling me I have been order my salt for the year. But I have to go through this process, through this state to make the order. But it's set on a calendar clock, not on a quantity order.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great if I'm getting low, then I need to call, because we have we call it a surplus, it's the reserve. So we have a reserve quantity that we order at the beginning of the year as well. And if I need to call and order my reserve to be delivered, then that clock will work. But I also need to know every year it's time to order my salt before I miss my opportunity to order my salt.
Okay. And I can put that in as an enhancement request, and see what we would do. I need to think about it. You could create a service request and schedule it out, and that service request could be scheduled out, more than a year in advance, or a work order, which is like reorder salt. For what you purchased, creating a service request and then having it scheduled might be.
I mean, I'm okay with that. We don't, when we kind of lose for stuff, we just put it all in our service order request and set them in the calendar. Then it pops up. Make that, I'm guessing now that you make that service request repeat annually, or does it have to be turned
currently it would be reset every year. But let me think about that, because that's good thought. Let me cover that at like just after lunch, because I might make a phone call and ask somebody. You know, what we're really building up to, you know, is going back to this daily activity screen and then just simply being able to add a daily activity. You know, so we just talked about employees, we talked about locations, and we talked about equipment and materials. Now, the one thing I didn't talk about was tasks, so let's talk about that. The task is really the list of work that you've done. So if I click on tasks, these are sometimes called task codes, sometimes called job codes. And it's the type of thing that you're doing. And then it's typically broken down by, you know, the type of work. So you could be doing, you know, plowing alleyways or just salting or sanding. You know, there's a number of things that you can do. Now the codes here are made up and can or probably will be changed to make it a little bit easier to use. But for, I went here to PubWorks data, and then I clicked on tasks, and then I clicked on list view. Now, just like every other record in PubWorks, the menu option is the same, and then the general info tab will tell you the record that you're looking at. So your task code number 17 is culvert inspection. It's of the task type called stormwater. And the reason why we subcategorize things in PubWorks is it really adds a lot of breadth and depth in the reporting. So it might not mean anything to you that, you know, culvert inspections is under stormwater, but when we go to run reports, that adds a lot of flexibility. And we'll probably talk about that in day 2 or day 3 in pulling reports, but first we need to log some work before we can do that. The task can require employees, contractors, equipment, materials. So you can say for a specific activity, if you're choosing a specific task, that it requires equipment and materials. So what would an example of that be? If you're sending your kids out to mow, right, in the summer, they should probably use a mower. And if the mower costs some money per hour, then that needs to be in there. So you could go to mowing, and we could make it so that no matter what, when you're mowing, that it requires a piece of equipment. And that adds a logic check into the computer to make it work. The external code, sometimes that's used for exporting items. It's not used too often. But what is used for tasks is typically the unit type. So are you doing this by the hour, or are you doing it by the units? When you go to do pothole patching, how many potholes did you fix on Babbitt Lane? How many potholes did you fix on Main Street? And you can either require it or not require it. Now, a field task and a shop task are very similar to the material types. So if you want to do this out in the field or a daily activity, you'd mark it as a field task. But there's a whole list of shop tasks which are specific to working on vehicles. That way, when you go to log work in PubWorks on daily activities, you're not going to have pothole patching next to oil change. So to really sum everything up, we're going to log activity, right? So you guys have all spent about the last hour and a half or 1.5 hours in the training. So to log that in PubWorks, it's fairly simple. You'd be under daily activities and we'll click add. And then we're going to fill out this form for what we've just done. And I'm going to pick on Tim and fill out his time. But I'll have you closely match my screen, but you'll put your name in. And we'll, so we're at City Hall. Now there are a couple of things with the design of PubWorks that's supposed to be intuitive and easy to use. I don't know all of your locations, nor do I know if it's City Hall or something else. So when I start typing, it will guess what I'm going for. And if it's not in the system, and then I hit tab, it won't accept the record. And if I need to look something up, I can just click the L button for locate, and then I can type city, and I can search for it. Or if I click on this location code drop list, everything will be in order by the code, in alphabetical order by code, or I can click on the location name drop list and it'll be in order by name. And then we can choose training. We didn't use equipment. Even though we use computers, I don't think you need to log work on a computer. There's a customer we're working with, and I swear they have meetings to get ready to have meetings, to get ready to have meetings. PubWorks isn't supposed to be like that. For a while there, we talked about, we want you to use PubWorks, but not that much. And the idea is that, you know, it shouldn't take too long to log your work for the day. And if it is taking you a long time, or if it does seem like it's a pain, maybe we need to teach you how to use PubWorks in an easier way, or maybe I missed something in the training. So please don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help after I'm gone, because PubWorks is not supposed to ruin your day. It's not supposed to be hard.
If they have, say, begin a day or end day entry for their whole day, could they say I spent 1 hour doing this, 1 hour doing that, and have a list of tasks, or they have to do in each item?
It's one daily activity per thing that they did.
5 daily activity to get 5 daily entries.
Right. Right, and there are different ways to maybe make that easier or slower to use. I've added a few things for Tim, and you can see after I click save, he's got 3 hours for the day. I don't know, yours might say 1.5 if you've logged work for yourself. And then it'll also say, you know, 1.5 for the week and here. So if you get confused and you're like, well, did I log this twice? Did I not log this twice? You can always click the filter button, and that'll bring up a list of all the activities, and then you can filter it by your name or by the date, and that'll make this list smaller. And the list up here has all of the hours are summed up. One of the strengths of our mobile program is when you log work, you can see exactly what you've done for the day. And that's where we, you know, transitioning 7 years ago to mobile, or 8. That memo pad. Okay. Well, if you think about it, if they write it down in the notebook, then they write it down in their timesheet, and then they give it to April, and then she puts it in the computer, how many steps is that? Great. But with a computer, you know, 4 is always a 4. And there are checks in it. So now, notice how the hours are in decimal form. A lot of our customers aren't doing this to track every second of every minute of your day. It breaks it into chunks, usually 15 or 30-minute chunks of I did something and it was significant enough to write down. It's not like, oh, I went to the bathroom for 0.05.